Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan, a podcast for anyone wanting to start, grow or scale a profitable creative product business with me, Catherine Erdley. The Resilient Retail Game Plan is a podcast dedicated to one thing, breaking down the concepts and tools that I've gathered from 20 years in the retail industry and showing you how you can use them in your business. This is the real nuts and bolts of running a successful product business, broken down in an easy, accessible way. This is not a podcast about learning how to make your business look good. It's the tools and techniques that will make you and your business feel good. Confidently plan, launch and manage your products, and feel in control of your sales numbers and cash flow to help you build a resilient retail business. Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan, episode number 44. My name's Catherine Erdley. I am your host as well as the founder of the Resilient Retail Club, which is my membership group for creative product businesses. You can find out more at resilientretailclub.com. Today's episode is about an absolutely critical element for all product businesses, and that is your website. We're joined today by Anna Henneback, who is a really experienced e-commerce consultant and Shopify specialist. Anna has come into the membership and run workshop for us. So if any members are listening to this, then if you want to find out more, then go to the live workshop replay section and you can find Anna's workshop on improving your website conversion. She's really incredibly insightful about what it takes to create an effective website for product businesses. And I hope that you really enjoy the episode. Anna, welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, excited to have you. This is a really great topic that we're covering today. Do you want to start us off by telling us a little bit about you?
Sure, yes. My name's Anna Henneback. I'm a freelance e-commerce consultant and I work with small to medium-sized enterprises to sell more online. And I do that by creating, optimizing and managing e-commerce stores.
And you have a long history in e-commerce. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd say so. I've got about 15 years industry experience. I've worked at Net-a-Porter and most recently at H&amp as well. So big names, big e-commerce retailers.
And just sort of out of sheer curiosity, do you find that the big retailers have very different challenges to the small retailers, or is it all ultimately the same thing? Everyone's just trying to get their website working smoothly, effectively?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think they are similar challenges. I mean, everybody's dealing with having an effective website. Everyone's dealing with stock management and all of the things. It's all kind of the same challenges. But I think with bigger retailers, you get traffic more naturally coming to you because of the brand awareness. So that's quite a big difference in the different challenges.
Oh, that's such a good point. Yes, everybody's at least heard of H&M, or most people have heard of H&M, whereas when you're a small business, it's almost like you've got to get over that first set of hurdles. That is people finding out about you.
Exactly. And Google and other search engines, they tend to take the biggest ranking, the biggest, most popular websites first. So it ends up having quite a snowball effect.
Of course, yes. So when people are searching, then they're finding the bigger ones first. So small businesses have to work that much harder.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just talk for a minute about websites. And obviously, it goes without saying that everybody wants a website that works effectively. But do you want to just talk about sort of the impact of what happens if perhaps your website isn't working the way it should?
Yeah, well, I think having an effective website is very important, and having an e-commerce website is very important these days as well. E-commerce sales growth has been very high over the past couple of decades, but now more recently with the pandemic, I mean, we've all seen the importance of being able to sell online and sell outside of your store. And I would say that an e-commerce store is now expected for, well, all retailers really. But the one other really important thing is that you can reach a much wider audience outside of your immediate area. So if you're a small bricks and mortar store in a town, you can get a national, global reach by having a website, and that really increases your ability to sell and just increases your audience.
That's so true. And that's one of the, I suppose, if you're going to talk about silver linings for bricks and mortar retail in the pandemic, which let's face it, there have not been many, then the fact that so many of them have really accelerated their web presence has been really important.
Yeah.
I like what you said specifically about if you're a bricks and mortar store, then the web presence takes your reach out of the immediate area.
Yeah. And if you think about the way that we're now conversing on Instagram and Pinterest and all of these other social media platforms, they're not confined by boundaries. You can reach a lot of people that way. And if you've got an e-commerce store, that means you can also sell to them as well.
Right. Yes. Because a lot of the people there will be from completely different countries, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And so why do you think it is so important then for product businesses to focus on their websites?
It's like your shop window, isn't it? For a start, it needs to really convey your brand and get across what you're about and convey the quality of your product and your range. And then once you've got people onto your website, the way that you can make it really effective is to showcase your products and to be able to get people to buy them and check out straight away. So having a website that is effective, I think, is one that converts.
Yeah. What would you rather have? A website that looks great but needs tweaking the conversion, or a website that looks dreadful but converts really well? That's a bit of a loaded question, I guess.
It is a bit of a loaded question. Well, for me personally, I think it's really important to have a website with visual appeal. I do think that's really important. However, if you look at the really successful e-commerce businesses out there, Amazon being one, they just don't focus on the aesthetics whatsoever, and the visual is secondary. And so really they're only focused on converting customers and decreasing load times. Those are the two things that they're really concerned about, and it works. They're the most successful e-commerce business out there. It irks me a little bit, I have to say, going on it though.
It's so true. I'm sure it must be really galling to be focusing on creating, as you said, wonderful websites with great visual appeal, and then you go onto Amazon, which looks like I don't even know what it looks like. I mean, it just looks it's just so noisy and cluttered, and it's the one click. It's the ultimate, as I sometimes call it, the ultimate frictionless purchasing journey. Is that you see it, you click it.
Exactly. Yeah, frictionless is exactly it. But if I had to choose, can I choose both? I think personally, I think they're equally important. I mean, but the visual side is more of a branding thing. It's more who you want to reach.
I suppose maybe what I should have asked you is, what do you see as a more common problem when businesses come to you and they say that their website maybe isn't working the way that they would want it to work? Do you more often see that it's not visually appealing enough, or do you often see that there are other issues that are preventing the conversion? Would you say that the two tend to be related, or is it's not necessarily about visual appeal, it's more about functionality?
The thing with visual appeal is it's very hard to quantify. It's very intangible. If you're looking at a conversion rate of a website, you can't measure exactly how much visual appeal contributes to that. But I will tend to make some suggestions about how to. I mean, when we're talking about visual appeal, it's not just beautiful photography, although that is one thing. And it's also not just having less is more in terms of design. So you're not going crazy with loads of colours, loads of different fonts, that kind of thing. So there are different challenges with different websites because it all depends on how the business is running. I mean, and visual appeal isn't necessarily the one thing that's going to sell for some businesses. It is important to have, I would say it's important to have good photography. The visual is important in some ways, but there are other things. There are a couple of common themes that I tend to see. And one of those is designing for mobile first. The majority of customers these days are looking at a website on their mobiles. Well over 50%. That's different for different websites as well, for different stores. But I do see time and time again that businesses aren't looking at their, designing for mobile, looking at their mobile site when they're making any changes, not making the pages far too long so that people don't scroll that far. And then thinking about mobile site speed as well, so you don't have really large images. I've worked with a couple of stores recently where there were issues with the add to cart button on mobile because the page had been designed for desktop. So you really have to look at your store on mobile and ideally design on mobile when you're making any changes.
So you work with various different platforms, but you do also work with Shopify.
So I would say that most businesses I work with are on Shopify, probably about 80-90%. It's very popular these days.
It is very popular. So something like Shopify, are they generally optimized for mobile, or is it still worth, anytime you make a change, going through and just checking things, that making sure that any change that you've made, because I suppose, as you said, so of course you came into the Resilient Retail Club and did a fantastic workshop on website conversion, on improving website conversion, and you were talking about the fact that when we make changes to our websites, typically it's a sort of typical small business owner that's probably wearing 100 million different hats, including having to do some of the changes themselves to the websites. They're going to be sitting there on their laptops or on their desktop computer making the changes. But then you were saying this example that you just gave then about the person who's then that add to cart button was obscured. That presumably goes for any platform. It doesn't matter whether or not the platform itself is optimized for mobile, but you've still got to make sure that any changes that you make work.
Yeah, absolutely. So Shopify, I would say most of the themes, most of the designs that you can get are fully responsive, which means that they will adjust to different screen sizes, any screen size at all, whether that be a phone or an iPad, laptop. There's different screen sizes within the range of phones as well. So fully responsive is what you want to go for. And Shopify ticks that box. But if you start adding apps, if you kind of make any design tweaks, all of those things can affect it. And because on mobile specifically, there's such a small screen size and there's a lot of information to get there, ideally you want to have the most important information above the fold. So that means it's on this tiny area where you've got lots of information to get across. And if you're putting pop-ups are something to look out for, because they can obscure part of the screen. So That's the kind of thing to think about.
To check your pop-up when you're on a mobile to make sure it's not got sometimes I've seen them where they pop up and then you can't get rid of them because you can't see the little X and things like that.
Yeah, so annoying, isn't it?
So apps is an interesting one, because that is, again, for anyone who's listening who's got a Shopify website, that is a huge part of Shopify. The appeal of it is that you've got all of these apps that you can get from the App Store. So what would you say to people in terms of just keeping an eye on the app's impact on web performance, or should it really be fine unless you've got absolutely loads, or kind of what's the interaction, or what impact do they have?
It depends where they insert the code on the website. So some apps will actually slow down the page load time, and some will affect the customer journey. So pop-ups and that kind of thing, pop-ups and banners, and keep an eye on how those perform. Usually you can install them and then try them out. And then if you don't like them, then you can delete them. And usually that will uninstall the code.
Right. So then that will be done and you don't have to worry about it slowing you down in the future.
Yeah.
But again, worth checking and double checking and checking on mobile if you're installing an app.
Absolutely, yes.
So you talked about some of the kind of common pitfalls that you see with product-based businesses. You said so we were talking about this not being optimized for mobile. Was there anything else that really jumps out that when, you work with people, that there are common themes that come up time and time again?
Yeah, so mobile is one of them. Another one is looking at the visual kind of aspect. If they've got photography is really important when you're selling online, because it's one of the main things that is going to sell your products, and it's really hard to get across. Well, you can only really get across the look and at a specific angle with the photography. So it needs to be really good photography, but also adding things like GIFs and video to get more of a kind of 3D sense of the product is really good as well. And I think just trying to really less. I would definitely say less is more in terms of the design. So beware of having too many colours, too many fonts, that kind of thing. And you really want to be building trust with your customer. So if you think, especially when you're a small business, if a customer's just happened upon your site for the first time, they don't know who you are. The customers really want to know, okay, is this a real business? I really like this product. If I buy it, am I going to get it, or am I just going to be like scammed out of my money? That's kind of you really need to build trust with them. With any new visitors. And I would say that, especially for small businesses, new visitors are going to be the majority of your visitors. So about 80-90% I tend to see.
Okay.
So it needs to be professional, it needs to be consistent, have an about page, any sort of social proof, so reviews, customer generated content, so images of real people with your products. All of that really helps. There have been studies shown that people will trust the opinion of a complete stranger on on a store. For some reason, it really works. If you can see a whole load of people that are recommending the store, even if they're complete strangers, then people will be more inclined to buy from them. So,
yes.
So that's a really good one.
That's so interesting. Yeah, and the whole thing about reviews. Personally, I use reviews a lot in terms of when I'm purchasing online, especially when I think about things like purchasing from a marketplace and you want to know that the seller's reputable, or whether it's purchasing, say, a holiday or something like that. And I know what you mean. For me, it's not just about whether or not one person says it. I usually go through several different reviews. I think you can tell when there are fake reviews because they tend to be very similar, or similar in style, or I feel like so far, I should knock on wood really, but so far it's stood me in good stead. But just to really read through and understand what people say, and it's true, I do put a lot of faith in it. But you're right. I mean, in a way, it is ridiculous for people that you don't know. But at the same time, I guess I think what's really interesting about reviews is that when people have a negative review, they often get very concerned. But for me, and I know that I've read that this is true for other people as well, the presence of a couple of negative reviews doesn't necessarily make me think badly of the company. Especially, it depends on the context, because we've all had reviews where you think, well, that person's just completely unreasonable, and actually the fact that this review is still here shows me that they're not suppressing negative reviews, and actually it makes me more believe the positive reviews, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yes. And I was just going to say the same thing, that one or two negative reviews is not a bad thing. It actually just increases the authenticity of the reviews at all. So I know that a lot of small business owners can get it's personal, isn't it? You can get upset if you have a negative review, but I think if you have the ability to reply to it and write a reasonable reply, probably not in the heat of the moment, but if you write a reasonable reply addressing the concerns, then I think that shows authenticity, and it shows that you're a real person behind the business. And I think it can only positive things can come out of that, actually, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's really, I especially when I see, as you say, a negative review that the person's replied to, it usually makes me just go, okay, well, they're, number one, they're somebody who really cares about their business, and number two, they're not trying to suppress this. They're having a genuine conversation. And frankly, half the time the people who write really negative reviews it's fairly obvious from reading them that they're just either got completely unrealistic expectations or having a very bad day or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So we said mobile first, we said visual appeal, which can be about photography, which I agree is so important, and then video as well, to just take it to that next level, but not too many colors, not too many fonts, not kind of making people feel overwhelmed. And then that real authority, right? All of the things that you're looking for to make people feel comfortable giving their payment details.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Which I suppose the benefit now is that people are just so much more used to it. I feel like maybe 5, maybe 10 years ago, people would have been a lot more reticent about giving money to a small business that they didn't really know who they were, but I think that now enough people people buy from small businesses all the time. So I think people feel a lot more confident already, which I think is great. I think that the job that small businesses have to do to convince customers that they are, legitimate is so much, is less, but it's obviously something that still needs to be done.
Yes, no, absolutely. But I'm definitely seeing quite a big movement towards shopping small, and I think that small businesses have that on their side. People do want to shop with small businesses. People understand that if you want to have a nice high street with lovely shops, and you need to go there and you need to spend your money. You need to vote with your money.
Yes, vote with your money. Couldn't agree more. And also, I think as well, things like Shop Pay or even PayPal, I think all of those things actually really help people feel more confident, because they feel like, again, it's almost like they've got that extra layer of protection.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. I would definitely say trusted payment providers is a big. That's another one that I see quite often, is that people don't necessarily remove that friction at the checkout. You need to make it as easy as possible. And PayPal, love it or hate it, PayPal really make it really easy for people to shop.
Yes, I must admit, I try not to use PayPal when I can when I'm shopping in small business, because I know that generally speaking, they have, their fees can be a bit higher than some of the other options. But then there are some times when I'm just in bed with the phone and I'm thinking, do you know what? If I can get it on PayPal and I don't have to leave my cozy bed to go and find my wallet. Yes. I mean, it is sheer laziness, really, isn't it? But it's reducing friction.
Convenience. It's convenience. Yeah. And convenience that's a big selling point. So yes, convenience.
Do you find that there are trends in e-commerce in terms of design? And is it sort of like 1 year everybody's about this kind of functionality and then it moves on? Or have you just seen a sort of a gradual evolution over the last... It's always fascinating when you look back, isn't it, to see how the industry's moved?
Yeah. And it has moved on a lot since before. I mean, the biggest shift, I think, has been to mobile, and also in the page load times has got much faster. These aren't things that you necessarily notice, but as a customer, but these are kind of big trends within e-commerce. And then also there's a lot more use of video than there used to be. 15 years ago, it was impossible to get a video onto a website, but now people are using video to tell their brand story and to show products in 3D all the time. So that's a big shift as well.
And when you look forward, I mean, we talked a little bit about shopping small, but I mean, where do you see it going? It's a question that I get asked quite a lot about. Where do you see online shopping? Because we've had this huge shift. So we went from January 2020, there was about 19% of sales happening online. And then we went to January 2021, where it was up to about 33-34%. So it's massive shift in the year with the pandemic. Obviously, we're seeing a bit of a recalibration as things reopen. But do you think that I know this is like a big question, but do you think that the shift that we saw will be, there's only one direction, or do you think that we're going to see more of a hybrid, or do you think that we're going to see a real resurgence of physical spaces, or what's your sort of gut feeling in terms of where the industry's going?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So personally, I think that e-commerce is here to stay, and I think that it's kind of entrenched now in people's habits. I do think that people are enjoying going out and visiting shops again in a way that they didn't before, but I think it's different now. I think a lot of the trends have just been accelerated during the pandemic. So the idea of retail theatre and shops as showrooms rather than, and just retail as an experience rather than the only way that you can get stuff. You know what I mean?
Yes,
it's
yes.
Yeah. So I think that e-commerce is still going to be extremely important. But yeah, I think it's going to be a hybrid. I think it'll be really interesting to see once things have opened up again, to see how much it changes, and how much I think it's going to be about 50-50 sort of. I think it's going to be a hybrid.
Yes, which is even further than where it is now as well. I mean, that's the thing. But then I think that what's really interesting is how we've seen people shopping online who weren't shopping before, but we've also seen people buying products online that they maybe weren't buying before, and things like groceries that historically have had a very low penetration of e-commerce. That's even been pushing up as well.
Yes, yeah.
So if you had sort of a final piece of advice then for people listening who they have their product business, they have their e-commerce website, we know that e-commerce is only going to grow. Like, if somebody's sitting here today listening and thinking, I know that my website's not quite where I want it to be, not quite as effective as I want it to be. I know that this is a big topic, and that this is what we spent a whole hour talking about the other day, but kind of your top piece of advice if somebody's sitting here thinking, I want my website to do better and I don't know where to start.
That's a very big question. There's a lot of things to look into there. But I think to start with, if your conversion rate isn't as high as you would like it to be, then start looking at that stage of the funnel. So start looking at the checkout and the cart process. So how easy are you making it for customers to purchase? Do you have a very clear deliveries and returns policy on your page? Is it from the point of view of the customer? Really, customers just want to know, how much will it cost to get it delivered, and when will it arrive? I see so many small businesses saying things like, oh, well, I go to the post office on Wednesdays and Sundays and or Wednesdays and Mondays. And and it probably takes about a week. And it's like, no, all we want to say is it will be with you within a week and it will cost you this much. Look at that. That's a very easy one that anyone can do on their website. Make sure that you've got it very clear and very prominent. So if you can put it on the product page, that's even better. And definitely on the cart, make sure that it's very, very clear. So people aren't dropping off at that stage. Look at your payment providers. Make sure your checkout's branded as well. A lot of people miss this. If you've got a faceless checkout and you've been on this lovely site and then suddenly you get to the checkout and you don't recognize it, that's going to put customers off. So yeah, really just remove that friction, make it as easy as possible. Add an express checkout, add PayPal. Not everyone's going to shop with PayPal, but I think it's worth having it there for the people that do, because that's going to increase your sales.
That sounds like a great place to start. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and giving us all this fantastic information. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about where we can find you?
Yes, absolutely. You can get me through my website, which is www.henneback.co.uk. That's Henneback, or on Instagram, A Henneback.
As you said, you work across lots of different platforms, but you are a Shopify specialist. So if anyone's got a Shopify website and they're stuck and they need some help, and I get asked all the time, who's a good person to talk to? And I always recommend you. So
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
If you're listening and you're stuck, reach out and say hi to Anna, and I'm sure she'll be able to help you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks for having me.
Thank you once again for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that. I feel like Anna shared some really fantastic tips on where to get started. And if you want to have a more in-depth look at your website conversion and how to improve it, then club members head over to the live workshop replay section and look for Anna's workshop that she did for us in April, all about this subject. She covers it in a lot more detail. In the meantime, though, if you have a moment to share the podcast with a friend who you think might enjoy it, or how about you come over to Instagram and say hi to me at Resilient Retail Club, drop me a DM, tell me what you took away from today's episode, or even better, why not share and show us where you are when you're listening? I always love to see that. If you have a minute to rate and review the podcast, it makes a huge difference. I read every single review and I really cannot thank you enough to those people who take the time to do so. And finally, if you hit the subscribe button, then you'll be the first to know about the next new episode. Have a fantastic week, everybody, and I'll see you next time. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, then I invite you to check out resilientretailclub.com. The Resilient Retail Club is the membership for anyone wanting to start, grow, or scale a profitable product business. No more trawling Google trying to find the answers to your questions, or wading through general business advice that speaks mainly to service-based businesses. Whether you're still at the idea stage or you've been going for a while but want to get more focused and organised when it comes to your business, the Resilient Retail Club is the place for you. With a library of courses tailored to creative product businesses, several live sessions a month, and a supportive and active community, the Resilient Retail Club is the perfect membership to help you hit your goals faster. Check it out at resilientretailclub.com.